Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 130. Tonight, we're going to talk about the power of energy work. And every once in a while, I do a show and I call it the power of something. And it's usually because something really amazing has happened to me in that regard. But when I titled this show, I almost titled this show like Why Energy Work, because we talk about the power of energy work pretty much every week on this show. But I don't think I've ever devoted a whole show to it. And you've gotten bits and pieces of this story if you've been listening to the show. I'm going to go not into too much detail because I want to go into these stories that illustrate the power of energy work. But I want to talk a little bit about why energy work? Why did I go into energy work? Why do I do this? Why did I become an expert in energy work? Why did I become a master of Reiki, which is a form of energy work? And so just before I get into my amazing stories, just briefly as a little bit of background, which I've mentioned this before, but not everybody has seen every episode or listened to every episode of the podcast. So I grew up as a musician. I knew I had a gift. I was born with this gift of sharing my voice and words. That's kind of part of that, I think, this verbal expression, which also comes through in my voice as I sing. And I knew that when I shared my voice with people, it made them happy. And I think from a very early age, I wanted to help people. And that was one of the ways that I was doing that. But also at a fairly early age, people started saying things to me like, oh, you're really smart, you should be a doctor. And some of these kind of ideas, these stereotypes really that we have about what people should do with their lives, depending on what their gender is and whether we think they're smart and all of those kinds of things. But that never called to me. I used to joke with people, I don't do well without sleep. It's been true since I was a baby, and it's still true now. Becoming a doctor requires a lot of sleepless nights. That's not something I really ever had an interest in. But I was always interested in psychology. I always liked to figure out why people did the things they did. As an empath who didn't know she was an empath till much later in life, I had a lot of complex feelings at a really early age that I couldn't really identify because they weren't my feelings. And that was pretty overwhelming for me, and it took me till probably my 30s to really kind of get some understanding of that, which I gained mostly through energy work, honestly. But I was always interested in the mind and how the mind worked. And so when I went to college, I started out as a music education major. I was going to teach music, realized that didn't feel quite right to me, got more interested in psychology, ended up with a double degree in music and psychology. And I was actually enrolled in a doctoral level program for clinical psychology. I decided I was going to be a therapist. And I've mentioned many times on the show, my mentor, Sherry Ford, who was my therapist at that time, really exposed me to energy work. She is the one who taught me the word energy. She gave me my first book on the chakras, and she did it because I said to her, there's something wrong with me in this area. And I kind of pointed to my sacral chakra area, which you might chuckle if you've listened to any part of my story ever. I've had a lot of issues in that area physically. And I said, there's something wrong here, but it's not like, it doesn't feel like it's a physical problem. But I didn't have the words to express it. And so she gave me a book on the chakras, and I read about the chakras, and I was like, oh my gosh, energy. There's something off with my energy here. And it just like opened this door, and she gave me my first Louise Hay book, and she gave me Conversations with God. And it really, spiritually, she is the person who opened this door that I fully believe I was meant to walk through, but I don't know. If I hadn't met her, I'm not sure that door, it probably would have gotten open, but she opened it in just such a loving and amazing way. I'm so grateful to her for that. And so I was enrolled in this doctoral program, and I've mentioned this before on the show. It was the first fully intuitive decision I ever made. I decided not to go. And it was a really hard decision because I knew I was disappointing a lot of people, and I knew people didn't understand the decision. And I think a lot of people in my life thought I was just tired and burnt out. And maybe there was a little bit of that in there because I had been a highly kind of overachieving A student for however many years, kindergarten through getting a bachelor's degree without ever really taking a break. But there was much more to it, and I didn't even really understand it at the time. But there was this little voice in my head that was telling me that there was something more. There was something I was missing in this idea of just studying the mind. And when I say the word just, please don't take that as a judgment, because physical doctors, totally necessary. Mental doctors, totally necessary. I'm just telling you my story of why I got into energy work and why I think it's the most powerful tool at our disposal on some level. Not that other tools aren't necessary, but I think it's the most powerful tool. So I ended up not going to that program, and I was working at an Aveda store in a mall. My husband and I were traveling, and he was an x-ray tech at the time. So I was just kind of working as I could, and there was a little massage chair at the Aveda, and they gave us a quick tutorial. We do this little, it was just a little kind of very gentle kind of massage that was, everybody did the same thing. We were trained to do the same thing. And I never put my hands on somebody with intention before. You know, I'd have people say, oh, rub my back, or, you know, like, oh, rub my shoulders, but I'd never done it in a professional capacity before. And right away, people started saying things to me like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing at this. I feel so good. What did you, how long did you go to school for this? Like things like that. And I was just like, I took a 10-minute tutorial with my manager at the Aveda. But something in me, again, it kind of flipped a switch, and it was like, oh, there's something about touching people that brings this profound shift. And so it kind of led me to this idea of going to school for massage therapy. And at the time, I had never heard of Reiki. I still didn't know much about energy. I knew about the chakras, and I had read about kind of different energetic systems, but I really didn't know very much. And so I went to massage school, and I was lucky enough to go to school in California, and I went to an amazing program that was very well-rounded, and we had an entire kind of course on energy work, and we learned a lot about energy work, even though it was kind of an introductory level thing. And that is where I met my first Reiki teacher. And right away, it was like I had been doing it for probably centuries. It felt like coming home to me. I received my Reiki 1 attunement in 2003. I just found my certificate June of 2003, so almost exactly 20 years ago. And when I received that attunement, it felt like I had been drilled down into the floor. Like I could not, if I had wanted to move, I could not have moved. The energy was so potent and powerful. And I was in massage school, so I had been touching people in a professional way. I had been learning how to do massage and kind of feeling the power of touch. But the experience of this energy was beyond anything I had ever experienced before. It was a tangible feeling of, again, like this feeling like I had come home, which makes me emotional even now, 20 years later. This just loving acceptance and feeling of being in my element, of having found what I was here to do, I think, kind of. And it was so strong and it was so powerful. And I was just having a conversation with someone else who does energy work today about how it boggles our mind as energy workers when we encounter someone and we can feel this huge energetic shift. And sometimes people just they're not there yet awareness-wise. It can feel really subtle when you're starting. So from our perspective, sometimes people are having these huge shifts and they have no idea. And I have had this happen, especially early on in my career, where I feel these huge shifts and the person says to me, well, was I supposed to feel something? And I'm like, you didn't feel all that? That was crazy. But it takes training. It takes time. It can be a subtle practice. To me, it is not. To me, I was thinking about this. I'm totally all the way off on what I was going to talk about already, but that's okay. I was thinking about my feeling of experiencing energy, of touching energy, of sensing energy is the exact same I have about, like, if I touch my arm, if I touch my skin, there's a quality to my skin, is my skin hydrated? Yeah, it feels pretty hydrated. Doesn't feel dry. It's pretty supple here. Like, oh, there's a little bit of crispiness here. I can feel my skin with my physical hand, and especially as a massage therapist, and I can make some judgments about the quality of this skin. Is this healthy? How does this feel? Does it have good movement? Does it need to move in a certain way? That is the exact same way I can feel energy. And I am an expert in energy work, and it's something it's taken me a long time to just really claim that and step into it. I am a master of Reiki. I am now stepping into my role as a master teacher, and I'm starting to do attunements, which is something I kept thinking like, oh, someday I'll be ready for this. Someday I'll be ready for this. And a lot of that, if you've listened to me for a while, you know, just like most people, we all have self-worth issues. A lot of times we all have things that kind of get in our way. We have blocks about doing what we're here to do because we're afraid of how it's going to be received, or somebody has told us, well, you don't really know what you're doing, or you don't, you know, we've received criticism, and it makes us small. We make ourselves small in response to that. And so a lot of my journey and what I help other people do is to stop being small, to stop playing small, to reclaim your light and say, yep, I know what I'm doing here. I am an expert in this, or to become an expert in it, to feel the pull of what you're here to do and then follow that and learn how to do it. Totally off what I was going to say, but my journey to becoming an energy worker was a realization that it is the most powerful tool I have encountered for making lasting change, for having a feeling of fulfillment in my life, for experiencing joy. The joy that I experience grows like with every passing day. And if you had known me when I was first getting into this, like when I was 19, I was a pretty pessimistic person. I was a pretty sad person. I felt like things were a little bit dark, and I don't feel that way anymore, and I haven't for a long time. There is darkness. I have a story about that tonight, but I am so filled with light that the darkness has no chance. I need it as a foil because without darkness, we don't have light. I wouldn't have an experience of light if I wasn't aware of what darkness was. And that is why so many powerful energy workers, healers, whatever word you want to use for that, have a dark past, have struggles in their past, have things that have almost killed them in their past, because sometimes you got to get really deep into the darkness to open the space to let the light in. And that is what energy work is just opening this channel to let light flow through. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories tonight about the power of energy work. And I was talking to a friend, I was telling a friend these stories the other day, and it's somebody I know through my craniosacral work, and we were joking. I said, oh, it's so nice to talk to someone who understands what I'm talking about. And we coined the term craniosacral trip, like a drug trip. And actually, I've had multiple people say to me recently, wow, you take these amazing trips without ever taking drugs. It's like you've taken, mushrooms or some sort of psychedelic. And I said, I've never done that, so I don't know, but it sounds like it's probably similar. And that's one of those things that I will tell you, that was not an innate skill. I have a lot of innate skills that I have developed, but visualization and having visions, that has been a process of learning. That has been a process of practice, of meditation, of saying yes to receiving energy work, of being open, of being vulnerable, of being courageous about being willing to change and willing to shed those frequencies that get in the way so that I can open my channel even further, so that the information that comes in now just blows my mind kind of on a daily basis. So I'm going to tell you a story about a couple of things that happened to me over the last week to illustrate the power of energy work, and why I ended up saying to my friend, who's also a massage therapist, we were talking about body work and massage and energy, and at the end of the conversation, she had asked me about, so I've been having swelling in my belly, which I thought was related to endometriosis, and now seems like it hasn't gone away since the surgery, so now it seems like it's more of a digestive thing. And I said, oh yeah, I've received this fascial counterstrain. And she said, oh, does it help with the swelling? And I said, it does, but the swelling always comes back. And I would rather address the root cause of that, which is always energy. It's always energy underneath. everything, underneath the physical, underneath the mental. And they inform each other. You know, you can have a physical trauma that then causes emotional holding or stagnation, or a mental trauma, emotional trauma that causes energetic holding or stagnation. But the deal with the energy is if you don't address the energy, the physical and the mental and the emotional will never change. The only way to change the physical, the emotional, and the mental is to address the underlying energy. I firmly believe that after doing this for 20 years, and that is why I do energy work. So here's a story about the power of energy work. So I had a client come in last week, and I have permission to share this. I'm going to be fairly vague about the details, but it's important because it informs the rest of the story. And this is someone I've seen a few times. This is someone who also practices body work, energy work, and so they're very open. And we always have the more open you are, the more open-minded and hearted, and the more energy work experience you have, generally the bigger the experience can be. Although I've had people who've never had energy work have huge releases and huge experiences. That it's not a requirement, but it tends to kind of elevate the session. I'll just say it that way. So this person came in, and as my favorite thing to do, receiving and giving, is to just let the person be intuitive, because that is where you are meant to go. That is where you are meant to be. And that is where the most powerful shift happens, when you just let that intuitive direction take over. So I started working on this person, and I became aware of this darkness that was in this person. And we've done some past life work before. We've done some kind of releasing, and she's very open. And so we started talking about this. And essentially what we figured out together was that this was some sort of kind of dark energetic attachment. Some people use the word entity. I don't know if I like that word, but that this was a dark energetic attachment that had been with this person through something like 500 layers of lineage, multiple generations, just through the family, this dark energy that would kind of attach itself, and then depending on how the person responded, sometimes almost take the person over, essentially. I mean, some of the wording I was using when we were talking about this was almost like this idea of being possessed. I don't really like Christian imagery, which comes into the story here in a minute, but I like to use the word energy because it's a little less charged than saying something like evil. But this was a dark presence that was not doing good things to the people it was in and to the people these people encountered. And it had been there for generations. And I could see it through this person. This person, through their own work, had kind of concentrated most of it into their belly, but there were like tendrils and there were little pieces, and there was like a concentration in the brain. And I thought, okay, well, like, I'm seeing this for a reason. It's obviously time to do something about it. And if I had been in that situation maybe 5-10 years ago, I might have gotten scared and not known what to do. But because I do this work so much, because I'm an expert in this, I knew how to approach this, which most of the time, honestly, is to just kind of ask, what am I supposed to do here? How do I deal with this? What do I do with this? And interestingly, this energy itself was kind of like, right away it came to me that it was time to, first the word came as destroy, and then it came as transmute. And I use that word a lot. Love transmutes darker energy into love. And this actual entity, this actual energetic force, it wanted to be transmuted. It no longer wanted to exist the way it did. It was tired. It was tired of being bad, kind of, is what was coming through. So I started collecting this darkness and kind of concentrating it more into this person's abdomen and collecting it and pulling it out of all the little places I found it. But it was like, well, I got to get it out of the person in order to transmute it. It was coming to me that it needed to be like removed and then kind of put back in as light. And the person had said to me, oh, Archangel Michael is here. And I said, oh, that's great. And in my mind, I thought, well, I don't really work with angels and archangels, and I have some baggage from being raised Christian, and it's just not imagery that I really respond to. But again, I have learned over the years to accept help when it's offered. If the help feels loving, if the presence feels loving, for the highest good, always setting that intention, I accept any help that's offered. So I said, oh, great. I accept any help that's offered. And I was kind of pulling this dark stuff, and it was really thick and oily, the consistency of the energy. And I was pulling it, and it was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And then I kind of started throwing it at the wall, which is not something I would ever do. I was like, well, I don't want to throw this like into someone else or leave it in my space. Like it was a weird thing, but I was just going intuitively with it. And then all of a sudden I kind of looked, and I saw, like in my mind's eye, because I don't really have visions with my actual eyes, but in my mind's eye, I saw Archangel Michael standing there holding a sword. And because I'm me, the way I saw him was as He-Man from the 80s cartoon. He looked like He-Man holding his big sword up, and he used to, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power. And he said to me, oh, you can see me, if that makes you more comfortable, like see me as He-Man, that's totally fine. But you're throwing this oily, dark stuff, throw it into my sword. My sword attracts this. My sword is made of light. And throw it at my sword. And then when we get it all out of her, you're going to take my sword and you're going to put the light back in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to hold your sword? Like, sweet. So we took all that dark energy out, put it in the sword. And then I went over and this is what I mean when I say my experience of energy is a tangible experience. And that is a skill that can be developed, that we work on together in our guided meditations and our healing sessions on every show. In this particular situation, my hands became glued together like they were a sword, like they were one thing. If I had wanted to remove them, to take them apart, I don't think physically I could have done it. That's how strong the energy was. That's how powerful it was. So I had this sword, and I took this light, and my hands were beyond hot. I don't know that they were like an inferno of energy. So I came back over to the person, and then Michael said to me, now don't touch her with your hands because the sword is too powerful and you could do damage. And I was like, okay, so he guided me to kind of, at that point, take my hands apart and start putting this light back into the person in various parts of their body without touching the body, which is not something I usually do. I do both, but I tend to touch on the body and sometimes around, or I work further out, but I don't tend to hover right over the body. But this is what I was guided to do. So I was putting this light back in, filling all these areas up with light. And then at the end, my hands again, like without, this was not me doing this. My hands came back together, and I began to kind of anoint this person, almost like I was, what is that when you make somebody a knight? I was anointing with the sword, and the sword was kind of going back and forth, and the sword was moving on its own. And then eventually I came back to this place where I had first encountered Michael / He-Man, and the sword, he took the sword back, and my hands came apart. And I was like, okay, well, that was a thing that just happened. It might have been it was one of the most powerful sessions I've ever had with someone. It was right up there with the expansive grief release that I write about in the introduction of my book, Spiritual Integration, when I talk about the experience I had with the client, where we were guided into that dissipation through expansion process. Right up there. They're pretty close. And so the person I sat down and kind of were just like, holy crap, what just happened? And I just saw this person again, and they said that everything has changed for them, that all of these questions they had have been answered, that all of these things are now falling into place in a way that has never happened to them before. That is the power of energy work. But my story's not over. So I went from that session into a session where I was receiving. And I went to see my craniosacral teacher, Heidi Wilson, here in Tucson. And I've never had a full-length session with her. I've had a couple demos that I've talked about on the show, but I've never had a full 1-hour session with her. And so I told her I've been having this bloating in my belly and it feels like my digestion's not really working right. And I can feel that there's energetic holding. Basically, I've released a lot of stuff from my heart and my throat and my shoulders, but kind of in my torso from my belly or kind of sternum, lower sternum down to my thighs, something is going on. And this is why I will always continue to work on myself, and I will always encourage myself and others to receive from another expert, because sometimes we just can't see everything. There are blind spots. And so like in this case, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I can tell that it's an energetic holding. And if I can release it, I think the physical problems will start to resolve, because that is how energy works, because energy is the foundation for everything else. And so I said, I don't have any expectations. I'm just telling you, this is kind of what's in my mind. This is what led me to make this appointment. And so she started at my sacrum, which is the 2 demos I had with her both involved my sacrum. So that was probably a pretty safe bet to start there. And I'm not going to go into super amount of detail, just time-wise, and just because some of it was a little bit private. But what started to come up was this idea, I could suddenly feel all this fear that was being held in my body. And we talk about fear a lot on the show. And we are surrounded by fear. We receive fear, like that dark entity that was in my client. That is, everything that is dark in this reality is rooted in fear, anger, what people call evil. It's all rooted in fear. Fear and love are really the only 2 things that exist. So anything that feels dark or negative generally is rooted in fear. And I could feel all this fear, and I could feel the ways that I'd taken fear on. And we take fear on generationally, and the person, and again, when we've talked a lot about trauma, there's no blame in that, because if we get fear from our parents, it came from their parents, and that came from their parents, and on and on. In my client's case, it was 500 lineages or whatever, generations, whatever that means. So we have this generational fear that's kind of poured into us, and now they've actually discovered that we carry emotions in the mitochondria of our DNA. So we come in predisposed to fear if the people before us were predisposed to fear. That has been scientifically shown to be true. So we receive this generational fear, this ancestral fear. We receive fear from the culture that tells us to be afraid. We receive fear, depending on how you're raised, about being different, about we're all supposed to be the same in some way. So whatever way you were different in, which everyone is, we're not supposed to be the same. We're supposed to be unique. But for some reason, we've all convinced each other that we're, oh, you need to be the same. We all need to be the same. We need to stay in this little tiny box. That box is made of fear. So no wonder I was holding so much fear in my body. I think it's a pretty common occurrence in all of us to some degree, but this was like really intense. I could just feel it through my whole body, and I could feel how it had like poured into my body and how I had just taken it on, and it felt like I was in a cage. I felt like I was in this cage. And so as she was holding, this fear started to release, and like my body started to move of its own accord. That's one of the things about craniosacral that I think that's part of the trip. Like my arm just like shot out to the side, and I had no control over it, and my head turned, and at one point my mouth opened wider than a mouth is supposed to open. It felt like my jaw actually unhinged. And then I started making this noise, and the sound was coming out of me that I could not reproduce. It was this low, like guttural kind of sound. It was coming out, and it was all this fear, and it was all coming out of my body. And I was having some, emotional releases, and I could just feel this energy moving. I could feel it coming out of my intestines, and I thought, oh, no wonder my belly doesn't work right. Like it's all filled with fear. And then my buddy, Archangel Michael, slash He-Man was back with his sword, and he said, hey, send all the sword will take all the fear. Send all the fear to my sword, and it will take it away, and it will sever the places that the fear has been pouring into you. And just let me do this work energetically. And I was like, oh, I mean, I just saw what you did for my client. Like, please do. And as the session went on and this fear released, and I had these emotional releases, and my head was moving in weird ways, and my shoulder was moving, and then all of a sudden my head started moving back and forth, and I said, oh, we're dancing now. Because there was this celebration of releasing all of this fear, all of this tension and tightness, and this feeling of being in a cage. And I started hearing Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid, the original. There's a new one coming out, which I'm excited about, but there's the original cartoon Disney version has this song Under the Sea, and Sebastian the Crab is singing Under the Sea. And I could feel my intestines moving in my belly like they were underwater. And I kept hearing this line from the song, darling, it's better down where it's wetter, take it from me. And like, my whole body, like I started dancing and moving, and Heidi actually plays in a band called Baba Marimba, and I could hear the marimba in the song da 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 da, and it was like it was this joyful, it was this intense release of fear that turned into this joy, this freedom of having released that. And it was an hour that went by. For me, it was like 5 minutes. Like when she finished, I was like, that was an hour? How is that possible that was an hour? And I sat up and I looked at her, and she just is so amazing at holding space. And I felt so safe and supported. And she was kind of laughing and singing along with me a little bit. And I looked at her and I said, I had all that fear in me, and it wasn't even mine. It was just this fear that I'd taken on. And my body felt totally different, and my belly felt totally different. And I thought my intestines are going to work differently from now on. And one of the things that can trip you up with energy work is that energy, this is a dense plane. I say this a lot. So when you have a big energetic shift, sometimes it takes a little while to be reflected in the physical, or it has to kind of integrate into the physical. But the change will happen. When you release the energy, the physical change will follow. Absolutely, it will follow. And that is the power of energy work. Energy is the foundation of our health and well-being, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And let me tell you that right now there is a huge shift coming. We are at, the way it came to me today is like when you pull an arrow back and you're an archer and you're going to release the arrow, there's a huge amount of energy that gets pulled back before the arrow shoots out. We're in that period of being pulled back. And what will happen if you are aware, if you accept this challenge, if you step into it with courage and vulnerability and authenticity, there is an opportunity here to level up in a way you never imagined. There is a reason that I am finally starting to offer Reiki attunements, even though I've been attuned and I was taught to attune others to become a master teacher in 2005. And I've only done it twice, and it was for my mentor, Sherry Ford, and her friend. That is why I got that attunement then. We are being invited to step into this shift with presence and courage, and to use all of the tools that are at our disposal in order to weather this change that is coming. And not all of us are ready to be there, and that's okay. There's no judgment about that. But I will tell you, if you choose to step into this, there is going to be an opportunity for expansion beyond which you have no comprehension. I have no comprehension, and this is what I do for a living. So keep watching the show, listen to the show, donate to the show if you feel called, paulataylorenergy.com on the podcast page. But also think about signing up for an energy work class. Sign up for one of my dimensional frequency expansion classes. Start working with energy yourself. Start receiving help to work with your own energy. Book a one-on-one session with someone who does energy work. I work with people virtually and in person. There has never been a more important time for you to start working with energy than now. And you don't need to be an expert to start working with your own energy. You don't need to be an expert to receive from an expert. That is what we are trained for. But I am telling you, if there has ever been a time to do it, it is now. And every week on the meditation, I work with you energetically. I send energy. I send Reiki. I use frequency, vocal frequency, and sound bowl frequency. But I don't think that's going to be enough for the change that's coming. It's a tool, and it's a helpful tool. But it's time to start learning how to do this on your own. It's time to start learning how to channel, how to open your channel. That's what a Reiki, somebody asked me today, well, what is a Reiki attunement exactly? Opening your channel, clearing your channel so that the energy that comes through is clear and powerful and expanded. Releasing those muddy frequencies, getting out of that ego mind that's telling us that things are going to remain the same. They are not. Things are changing. The pandemic, if the pandemic didn't wake you up, believe me, there's more coming. I don't know what it is. And honestly, it doesn't matter because the message is the same. You need to be prepared. And to be prepared, the foundation of everything is this energy. Start getting familiar with your own energy. Start with the show. Start with the meditations. We're going to be on 130th healing session tonight. If that's where you're at, if that's what you have accessible to you, then do that. But think about getting a Reiki attunement. Think about exploring something like dimensional frequency expansion. Think about finding an energy worker because you're going to need to support. There is a huge influx of energy coming in right now, and everyone I've talked to who knows about energy feels it. And what happens when a huge influx of energy comes in, if you're not prepared for it, if you're not able to make the space for it, is that it knocks you down. And sometimes that's as it's meant to be. And when we do Reiki attunements, we call it the Reiki cleanse. Some people call it the Reiki flu. Sometimes you get a little sick because there's so much energy coming in. Your body has to make space for it. Energetically, we make space for it, and it can cause some physical symptoms. There is a huge influx of energy coming in, and it is going to increase. And if you are not working with that energy or working with someone who's helping you open to that influx of energy, to that huge influx of energy, it is going to knock you down. It is going to start making you feel sick, and things are going to feel difficult. And again, sometimes that's part of life, but this is a global change that is happening. And it's happening sooner rather than later. And I don't say this to scare you because I just talked about releasing fear. I say this to wake you up. I say this to bring awareness. I say this to share with you what I feel for myself. Get serious about your energetic practice. Develop a practice. Have somebody help you develop a practice. Find out what works for you. Find a practitioner to work with, and as the energy comes in, then you will be able to make the space for it. And as you make space for the energy, rather than having it knock you down, it will level you up. My friend likes to use the word level up, like we're in a video game. You don't want to get stuck on the same level, and you certainly don't want to get kicked down to a lower level. Again, that's a judgmental thing, but we're using a video game thing here, so I'm going to go with the kind of hierarchical idea of that. If you want to level up, you've got to do the work to get there. You can't win the video game level without practicing, without trying, without figuring out what tools you need to get through that level. Find them. They will serve you, and then you will be able to serve the way that you are here to serve. But as long as that fear vibe is still in your cage, as long as you're caged in by your fear, that little monkey mind voice is going to tell you, I can't do this. Oh, this is not for me. I'm not powerful enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get here. Find someone to help you, and they will. And they will. Whew, I talked for like 40 minutes. That's okay. It was important. So in tonight's healing session, we're going to do a self-healing session. It's a meditation. It's a healing session. It's a mini Reiki session, whatever. And here's the thing about Reiki. And if you're interested in getting attuned, right now I'm doing them in person only, but I might do them virtually. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to kind of feel how that feels. You don't need to be attuned to do Reiki. Reiki is channeling light. I have taught you for 129 episodes how to open your crown chakra and call light into your heart center. Reiki is just sending that energy out through your hands, which are an extension of your heart. The reason we get attuned is because a lot of times without extra training, without extra kind of opening of the channel, we end up giving our own energy away. And we've talked about that a lot. We don't want to do that. There's so much energy available to us. I just said there's a huge influx of energy right now. Why would I give you my energy when I can give you universal energy? My energy's got some stuff going on in it. You don't necessarily want my energy. You want universal love and light energy. That is what Reiki is. With intention, you can give Reiki to yourself, to others. The attunement just amps up your power. It just opens your channel. And each attunement you receive opens your channel further. Dimensional frequency expansion, very similar. It works in a little bit of a different way because we're doing the emerald, that's the heart. We're doing the amethyst, that's the mind. We're doing the onyx, which is the body, etc. I'm not going to go through all 7 layers. But we're opening parts of the body to receive more energy so that as we transmit energy, we are a more powerful channel of energy. And that means you can channel energy to yourself. You can channel energy to your family, to your animals, to your plants. There's going to be some food issues coming. Giving Reiki to your food that you're trying to grow, or getting into a co-op with neighbors and Reikiing the food, Reikiing the processed food if that's all you can get. Reiki is a transformative energy, and Reiki literally means universal life force energy. That's what it means. It's just a ki is the Japanese word for energy. Ki, chi, prana. I say that a lot. Prana, that's from the yogic tradition. Chi, that's the Chinese word for it. This is all just energy. So channeling energy, that's what Reiki is. You can use the word Reiki. You can get trained in Reiki, but it doesn't have to be Reiki. Intention. Start with intention, but think about finding a way to amp that up with some help. So we're just going to do a nice, gentle self-healing session. If you don't feel the energy, don't worry about it. Keep practicing and you will. You might feel some heat in your hands. You might feel some cold in your hands. You might feel some tingling. You might feel just like your breath is deepening, or you're feeling a little heavier in your seat. All of these are signs. Deepening of breath, prana, that is a movement of breath in yoga. We draw prana, we draw energy in through breath work. That is one of the reasons that they use a lot of breath work in yoga. So deepening of your breath, that means energy's moving. That means you're doing energy work. Being aware, oh, I got a belly. I forgot I had a belly down here. I can feel it now. Getting embodied, that is energy work. Coming into your body means your energy's not hovering outside of your head anymore. You've drawn it down into your body and you're actually embodied, which is how we are effective on this plane. So don't judge yourself about whether you can actually feel heat or whether you can feel the expansion and the movement of energy. I did one a long time ago where we rubbed our hands together and we felt our little energetic ball. We'll probably start with that tonight. If you don't feel anything, that's okay. Just follow along and set the intention and that will do the work. So let's meditate and self-heal together. Hey, say hey, Take a nice deep breath in through your nose, sigh it out through your mouth, that audible ha sound. Sound is a beautiful way to move energy. So let that audible ha sound vibrate the vagus nerve that tells your body to come out of fight, flight, or freeze, and moves energy down that channel from the head down to the earth. With intention, allow your crown chakra, the top of your head, to open. Let's call in that universal love and light energy, that divine energy, that ki, that chi, that prana. Calling it in through the head, down through the throat, into that heart space. Just pause a moment here. Maybe put your hand on your heart. You might notice your hand heating up. You might notice some tingles. If you don't notice anything, that's fine. Just set the intention that you're calling that love and light into your heart. And then the hands are an extension of the heart. So place both hands on your heart and feel this connection here. Again, maybe feel your hands heat up. Or maybe they feel cold. Maybe they feel tingly. Just developing that connection there. And then drawing this energy, as we always do, down into the torso, remembering that you have a belly. Coming out of the mental space for perhaps the first time today or this week. Letting your energy come down into the hips and the pelvis. And if you don't feel this, that's okay. We're going to come back to this and just inviting that energy to flow down the thighs, into the knees, lower legs, ankles, and feet. We're actually going to direct energy all the way down the body. So if you didn't feel that, that's okay. Let go of any judgment that comes up here. Place your hands together at the heart in that prayer position, in that namaste position. Just set the intention here. You might say this out loud. I call in energy for love and light. I call in energy to heal myself for the highest good. And remember here that the word heal doesn't mean cure. Maybe healing just is bringing some relaxation. Maybe it's just bringing you out of fight, flight, or freeze tonight. Maybe it's getting rid of a little bit of tension or discomfort. Let go of the expectation that that word healing means to cure. And just let the energy flow. Maybe you're feeling your palms heat up. Maybe you're feeling some vibration or tingles. If you're not feeling anything, that's fine. Come back to this and you will. At some point you will. Place your hands on the top of your head, up around that crown chakra. Whatever is comfortable here, and you can do this with intention, but if it's accessible, I do encourage you to use your hands here to direct this energy. And just call this love and light into your head. The sides of your head, your forehead, the back of your head, just leaving your hands still for a moment, taking a few deep breaths. You can use that audible ha sound, that oxytocin breathing, or just breathe deeply. I do encourage to take some nice deep breaths and to breathe out through the mouth as you release. That will allow the energy to release, breathing out through the mouth. You might feel like you want to move a little bit gently with the hands, or just keep them still. If your arms start to get tired, just relax them down and use intention, or bring them down and back up again. Bring your hands now in front of your face. I'm going to hold them a little out to the side, just not to interfere with the camera and the sound, but you're going to want to put them directly in front of your face here, kind of over your face, or off to the side if that feels better. Directing this energy into the brain here, into the throat. Letting out any nice sighs. If you start yawning, that's a great sign of energetic release. You start feeling twitchy or like you need to kind of move your body, that can be a great sign of energetic release. Letting those hands come now to the throat, just gently kind of resting in front of your throat. Lots of energy to be released here usually. You might, even if it's accessible, put a hand behind your neck and kind of cup your throat from the front and the back. If that doesn't feel good, just leave the hands in the front. You can kind of rest them on your chest. So much fear gets trapped in our throat, so send a couple of breaths into the throat here. Let this energy pulse into your throat. A lot of emotional holding in the throat here, so receive that energy into the throat. And then allow the hands to come into the heart center, resting above the heart, the center of your chest or just above. You might put one right at the center of your breastbone and then one below or above. That's a nice way to kind of get this whole heart center covered. If you pay attention here, you might notice something happening with your hands. If you don't, that's fine, but maybe they're starting to feel warm or tingly or cold. You might just start to notice, or there's some sensations happening in your hands. I'm being directed to kind of move my torso a little bit, shaking up some energy, but you can move, you can stay still. This is an intuitive process. So I'm directing you to self-heal, and yourself is the one who knows the best way to heal. So let that intuition guide you. Taking a nice big deep breath into the heart here. Releasing anything that's no longer serving you, and then bringing your hands down to the belly. One hand above the other is a great way to kind of cover a big part of the belly. You want your upper belly, your lower belly. And notice right away that you're probably having judgments come up about your belly. Notice right away that you've probably been holding tension in your belly. Maybe you've been sucking it in all day. Don't do that. Let it go. Let it relax. Let yourself have a nice, big, beautiful Buddha belly. There's a reason the Buddha had a nice, big, full, motion, full belly. His seaweed was flowing in the belly. His intestines were moving. He was not afraid to eat with joy and to enjoy that food, to enjoy it as love and nourishment and light. Give your belly some love here. It needs it. And if you're called to, you might even move to the sides of your belly. You might feel like you want to kind of gently rub around on your belly. And if you're feeling a hard time connecting to your belly, if you're feeling a lot of judgments, that's okay. Just let them come up and keep doing the work. Keep setting the intention. I send love into my belly. I accept love into my belly. This is a great place to come back to anytime you need to. Spend lots of time giving love into your belly. Bring your hands now to the bottom of your belly, kind of just above the pubic bone, just above the hips. This is the Dantian. It's also called the Hara. This is this powerhouse of energy. There's a huge storehouse of energy here. So we want to charge this up so that when we do get depleted, we have plenty of energetic reserves to call on. You might find that you want to kind of move your pelvis and your hips a little bit here. You can stay completely still. Maybe your hands are feeling nice and hot and tingly. And again, direct some love into the low part of your belly here, holding all your organs, all those processes happening, waste removal, eating and digestion, vascular flow, all the blood and the lymph moving through the body. All of this is done without your conscious effort. What a miracle this is. So just sit with your hands on your belly and send that beautiful love into your belly. Recharge this storehouse of energy so that when you need it, it is available to you. And let go of any nice sighs as you need to. You might find yourself getting emotional here. That is energetic release, so just let it flow. If you don't fight that energy, that emotion as it comes up, it just flows through and out. And then the energy has been released. Bring your hands now to your hips, maybe the sides of your hips or even the backs of your hips. Maybe rub some little nice circles around that head of your femur, that kind of bottom of your hip, right along the side or even in front. And this is where a lot of us lose access even more. We're in the mental space. We can kind of make it into the torso. Sometimes we can even make it into the belly. But when I ask people to come down into the hips and the legs and the knees and the feet, I lose them. So really spend a moment here and feel your skin underneath your hands. Come to the top of the thighs here now. Feel this energy coming out of your hands. Maybe it's coming out as heat or tingling or cold, or just set the intention. Maybe you're actually seeing light. Maybe you're seeing a color here. But feel your legs. Remember that you have legs. It's easy to forget they're there. They're just carrying us around without being thanked. Give some gratitude to your legs for holding you up, for having the strength to support you. Maybe you're being asked to move them a little bit here, and then slide your hands down to your knees. Depending on the position you're in, you may not be able to reach your knees, but that's okay. Just slide them down as far as is comfortable on your thighs and direct the energy to your knees. Your knees are your support system, and there is so much energy that gets trapped here. Any kind of feeling of being unappreciated gets trapped in the knees. Any kind of feeling of being unsupported gets trapped in the knees. So just directing some love into the knees here. If it's not accessible to reach the knees, again, just set the intention. You can even kind of put your hands in the air and just point your palms towards your knees. Really feel your knees here. Be aware that they exist, both by pointing your hands at them, but also within your own body. Oh, I have knees. Feel your knees. Maybe move them a little bit. That might help too. And then with intention now, because most of us can't reach all the way down to our feet, just start bringing your hands in a vertical motion down with the intention of drawing energy down from the knees to the ankles and feet. Drawing that energy down all the way to the feet now. And then you might point your palms down at your feet. And again, with intention, with love, the feet support us. So send some love to your feet. Send some recognition to your feet. You maybe forgot you even had feet. Feel your feet, maybe move them around a little bit. And then feel that energy go all the way down into the earth, like you're planting yourself into the earth. Beautiful roots growing out of your feet. Feel the feet as though they're buried in some nice warm sand on the beach, or some nice rich soil. And for the last few moments here, allow yourself to intuitively bring your hands to whatever part of your body is calling for it. Perhaps it's not your body. Perhaps you're being called to do some work outside the body. The energetic fields around our body are just as much a part of our physical body as the body itself. So maybe you're just doing some gentle brushing or sweeping up over your head and out to the side. Maybe there's a particular area in your body that you feel called to come back to. Maybe you feel a little bit of a catch in your energy. You want a nice smooth flowing field here. So whatever's calling to you, let yourself be creative. No one's watching you. No one's judging you here. And if you're not feeling the energy, that's okay. Your intuition will guide you. Let your intention guide you. Come back to your belly. That's always a great place to send energy. Come back to your heart space. And then for the last few moments here, just allow yourself to receive some energy. I'm going to send some Reiki through this transmission. I'm going to do a little more sound with the intention of smoothing your field. Releasing fear, releasing that which no longer serves you. Coming down through the body, releasing anything at a cellular level that's not serving. Allowing yourself to receive this beautiful love and light, giving it to yourself. If you feel like you're complete, you can send some energy out to someone you love with intention, with permission, for the highest good. You always want to add that intention for the highest good. You always want to get permission before you send energy to someone. Even if it's just a spiritual, I send this for the highest good, and acknowledging that maybe it won't be received, and that's okay. So just receiving this now. Oh yeah, 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 oh yeah. Say oh yeah. Say yeah, yeah, oh. Say oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, say as we come out of this beautiful, gentle healing session, just because something is gentle doesn't mean that it wasn't profound. So give yourself a few moments here. Release anything else that's asking to be released. Let any emotions out. Let some sounds out. If you're in a space you can do that and it feels good to you, that's a great way to release energy. Maybe you're moving your body a little bit. That energy's asking to be moved through the body. Shaking is a really good way. Kind of come out of a healing session, get up and shake around, move a little bit. Take at least 3 more of those beautiful oxytocin breaths. As you come out of this healing session, notice that there has been a shift. Maybe it's a subtle shift. Maybe you just feel a little more heavy, a little more relaxed. Maybe your breathing has slowed. Maybe you feel really good and expanded. Maybe you're aware of the energy around your body now. Maybe you're starting to feel the flow of energy within and around you. Wherever you are on that spectrum, let go of judgment and know that this is a skill you can practice and learn. That you can learn how to work with this. That you can receive from an expert, and you can also find someone that will help you. This is a great place to start on this show, on this podcast. Take one more nice deep breath. Wiggle your fingers and toes if you've been still. Sadnam. The truth of your identity is that you are a beautiful being of energy. And the power of working with that energy is a beautiful life of expansion and love and joy and bliss. And you deserve that. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, or if you're in a space where it feels good and you'd like to drift off to sleep, if it's safe to do so, you can do that. If you'd like to stay in this space for a while and just enjoy the yumminess of some energetic flow, do that. But if you're coming back to your day or evening, just move around a little bit. Open the eyes as you're ready. Take another deep breath or two if it feels good. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a powered up rest of your week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.